Okay, this is a continuation of our chapter 12. That is lecture 14. We are going to look at human dignity now. And at the end, we are going to look at the right to privacy. What is human dignity? We all know what is human dignity, although there's not a definite definition. It has to do with someone's self-worth. What is your self-worth? It has to do with your identity, who you are, and how others perceive you. So human dignity is not only a founding value of the Constitution, but it is also an enforceable, independent, and self-standing right. That is why you find it in Section 1 of the Constitution as part of the founding values, and also in Section 10 of the Constitution as part of a self-standing right. So we are going to look at human dignity, its characteristics, and also we are going to look at the two approaches to interpreting the right to human dignity. That is, how do we interpret Section 10? We have two approaches, namely, we interpret human dignity as a value. That is, as a value as it gives effect to other rights. And we also interpret human dignity as a self-standing right. Now I'm going to look at some attributes, or rather characteristics, of the concept of human dignity, or the right to human dignity. You'll find the text on human dignity from pages 456 to 461 of your textbook. Pages 456 to 461 of your textbook. You can also read on several cases. We have the State versus Makwanyane case. It also tells you how human dignity is tied in with the concept of Ubuntu as developed over the years. And you can also read the case of Dawood versus Minister of Home Affairs. You can also read the case of Grootboom. You can also read the case of Minister of Home Affairs versus Fourie. I dealt with sexual orientation and gay rights, if I may say. You can also read the case of Oliver Road case. So they are all there on those your pages 456 to 461. So those are important cases for you to understand how human dignity work as both a value and as a self-standing right. Now, what are some of the characteristics of human dignity? Each human being has an inherent worth, regardless of circumstances, and should be treated accordingly. What does this mean? This means that as a human being, it doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is, it doesn't matter what your background is, your race, your creed, or whatever it is that you want to input on an individual. Each person has an inherent worth, that is an inherent human dignity that you are born with. Number two, dignity is viewed as what gives effect to one's identity and autonomy and moral agency. For someone to say this, that is why you find especially rich people and politicians, they will sue someone for defamation of character. Basically, they are saying you are reducing my self identity. So dignity is viewed as what gives effect to one's identity. So what people see is actually your dignity. The way you behave is how your dignity is perceived as an individual. It also gives you an autonomy. That is what makes you who you are. That is why we have concepts on African Renaissance and so forth. All these has to do with someone's autonomy, that is someone's dignity and someone's moral agency. Number three, human dignity demands that people be treated as unique individuals rather than as representatives of a group. So human dignity is what sets you apart from others. We might be both Africans, we might be both living in Africa, we might be from the same family, we might be from the same community, and so forth. But your human dignity, it sets you as a unique individual. That is one characteristic of human dignity. And another one is human dignity aims to create the opportunity for every individual to reach his or her potential and to experience freedom. So, what human dignity does, that is why we said human dignity as a value. Because, for example, if let's take for example the case of road bomb. If you do not have access to housing, what does it mean? It means not only is your right to have a roof over your head infringed, but also your right to human dignity is infringed, because you are lowered. Your status as a human being is being what, trampled upon, because due to what, due to deprivation, or due to what, due to lack. So you will not likely to achieve what, your potential. Let's take an easy example. Why did we have students going out protesting for fees must fall? Fees must fall was more than just a movement to ensure that students they get the education they deserve. It was also to ensure that they reach what, their potential. And if you do fail to reach up to go to school or to attain the level of education that you desire, it means your potentials of what you want to see yourself as in future, as a professional, as a provider for your family, is what is trampled upon. That is part of what, of human dignity. And if you may, in page 457 rather of the textbook, there is a case of Law versus Canada, Minister of Employment and Immigration. You can just read that extract from that case. It explains what is meant by a human dignity, making you to be perceived as an individual and giving you your own self-identity. Number five, human dignity secures the space for self-actualization. It secures the space for self-actualization. That is why you will find politicians, forgive me for giving examples with politicians, they'll tell you, I'm an African child, I'm this and this, because that is how they perceive themselves. And how do they determine that? They determine that through what? Human dignity. They'll say education for all for an African child, all the fees must fall, halabalu. It was all about this self-actualization, and we get it where? From us as being human beings and being possessing a particular dignity that is inherent. Number six, human dignity, when viewed as a way of achieving the notion of human freedom, it extends to social and economic factors. You can read that in the case of Ferreira rather versus Levin. No. Ferrari versus Levin. No. You can find that in page 458. So human dignity gives you that freedom, and that freedom extends toward to socio-economic aspects of your life. That is why when you see courts, when they adjudicate on socio-economic disputes, they usually refer to the right to human dignity. Like I said, in the case of Partb, if you read the case of Partb, the case of TAC, that is Treatment Action Campaign, which dealt with nevaropin to be provided for mothers who are HIV positive so that they will not transmit it to their children. It dealt with an aspect on human dignity. You can read it also in the Oliver Road case. It's also dealt with the housing. Human dignity extends to other aspects of what? Of your life, be it political, be it social, be it economical. That is why there are two approaches to human dignity, namely human dignity as a value and human dignity as an enforceable right. Okay, now let's look at human dignity as a value. And you can read the case of Dawood versus Minister of Home Affairs. Human dignity as a value because it takes cognizance of the disadvantage that people or groups suffer. In other words, human dignity tries to bring about healing and equality to the previously disadvantaged what groups. The Dawood case dealt with spouses of people in different countries. So in that case, the court had to go on and explain why it was important that even if you are married, your spouse should be given a right to be what? To be with you. This case concerned the right of spouses, dependent children, and destitute, aged, or infirm family members to remain in the country pending an application for permanent resident status, while all other family members were required to do what? To leave the country. Because to require such people to leave the country, it was said to impact on their what? On their right to human dignity. So that is human dignity as a value. It is important to distinguish between dignity as a value invoked to interpret other rights in the Bill of Rights and dignity as a freestanding right that can be relied on. So in other words, in terms of that the case, the court relied on the right to human dignity to invalidate the impugned legal provisions. That was the Aliens Control Act 96 of 1991. In the process of doing so, Oregon J explained the importance of the value of human dignity in the following terms. The value of dignity in our constitutional framework cannot be doubted. The Constitution asserts dignity to contradict our past, in which human dignity for Black South Africans was routinely and cruelly denied. It asserts it too to inform the future, to invest in our democracy, respect for the intrinsic worth rather of all human beings. Human dignity therefore informs constitutional adjudication and interpretation at a range of levels. It is a value that informs the interpretation of many, possibly all, other rights. This court has already acknowledged the importance of the constitutional value of dignity in interpreting rights such as the right to equality, the right not to be punished in a cruel, inhumane, or degrading way, and the right to life. We remember the Makwanyana case and also what we said about substantive equality. So it is important here that human dignity is even considered. I remember also in one of the lectures I spoke about the constitutional interpretation approaches, and I said we have your ordinary interpretation, that is your literal interpretation. We have your purposive interpretation that gives effect to the spirit and to the spirit of what? of the Bill of Rights. That is where you get your human dignity as a value. Purposive interpretation of the Bill of Rights. That is where you get your your human dignity as a value. Human dignity is also a constitutional value that is of central significance in the limitation analysis. That is why under the justification stage, one of the points, that is number 3, is although the measure is suitable, although it is necessary, at the same time, does it impose an excessive burden on an individual gauged against the public interest? And if it does, no matter how suitable, no matter how necessary the limitation is, it is said to be a violation of the what? Of the Bill of Rights. So that is why that limitation test is very important. That is why we have that justification stage. That is why in the equality the interpretation of the right to equality, we have substantive equality, and all those factors that are listed in the Huxon case, that it looks at the complainants that are affected by that infringement on their right to equality, that it look at the nature or the power that provision intends to achieve, that it look at whether those complainants have their dignity or self-worth being unnecessarily what? Impaired. So the right to human dignity as a value is very important when it comes to what? To interpreting other rights. Okay, so that is all you have to know with human dignity as a value. You can also read other cases. We have cases on pages 458 to 459 of the textbook. One of the cases is the Minister of Home Affairs versus Fori. It dealt with cases on discrimination based on sexual orientation. We also have cases on socioeconomic deprivation, like I said, the Partb case and the TAC case and the Oliver Road case. You find those 458 to 461 of your textbook. Now, as an enforceable right, this assists in the enforcement of other rights. I already said it. Human dignity can be an enforceable right. Where do we get that? The easiest is to look at this case of State versus Makwanyane, where it was said the death penalty is a cruel and inhumane punishment. As such, it infringed not only the right to life, but it also infringed the what? Human dignity. So that was human dignity as what? As an enforceable right. Okay, now let's look at the right to privacy. I'm not going to require you to know much. All you have to know is that the right to privacy is very important. And the scope of the right to privacy recognizes that we all have a right to a sphere of private intimacy and autonomy. By protecting this private and intimate sphere, we are allowed to establish and nurture human relationships without interference from the outside community. It still takes us back to your gay rights and your lesbian rights and your minority rights. The privacy, what people do in the privacy of their homes, what people do in the privacy of whatever environment they are in, it's none of anyone's business. That is why we now have your Civil Union Act. So it all has to do with the protection of the what? Of the right to privacy. That is why even police have to secure if there's a need, unless the object of their purpose is going to be defeated. They have to secure a search warrant before they do what? Before they enter into someone's house or into someone's premises. So that is to do with the right to privacy. Although it is limited, but the scope of a person's privacy extends only to those aspects in regard to which a legitimate expectation of privacy can be harbored. So there are certain things you can say, this is my private sphere. So the state and others cannot interfere with that is private sphere of an individual. So that is all that you have to know with the right to privacy. We can read the case of the Jordan case. That was the case that dealt with a prostitution, if I'm not mistaken. You can read that from pages 462 to pages 465. Pages 462 to pages 465. It all deals with the right to privacy. Thank you very much. I'm going to record the other lecture. That will be your lecture 15. I'll record it. We'll be dealing in lecture 15. We're going to deal with diversity of rights. We're going to look at freedom of association. We are going to look at hate speech and so forth. So we are going to deal, like I've always does, what I'll be doing, I'll be directing you to specific pages that I think are important in your textbook. So next time we're going to deal with diversity of rights from page chapter 13 and chapter 14 of the textbook. Thank you very much.